Freemasons often get a bad rap of being satanic or demonic or a secret cabal that's controlling the world, and this is only partially true. Okay, I'm joking there, but what I do want to get at here with this video is to show and demonstrate that aside from being an incredibly silly organization, Freemasonry does have its very deeply rooted, problematic behaviors and ideas about ethics and morality. What I want to do in this video is take some ideas from Morals and Dogma, which is a book very prominent in Freemasonry written by Albert Pike in the late 1800s, a core document of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. I want to point to some of the ideas in Freemasonry from that book and demonstrate how these are incredibly problematic from an ethical and moral perspective, leading people to very bad ideas about morals and ethics, and how essentially it's also self-contradictory and essentially a very silly belief system. Let's start by briefly explaining what Freemasons claim Freemasonry is. So if you ask a Freemason what it is, they will tell you this: a peculiar system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. This is what Freemasons claim Freemasonry is. And if you get more into the depths of that, they'll say they believe in a divine creator, they believe in a divine will of objective moral standards and ethics, they believe that good is rewarded and evil is punished. But essentially, if you actually boil down their beliefs on morals and ethics, it's an appeal to a natural order, preferences, what they self-prefers as morality, what people believe they ought to be doing by observing the world around them. And it's a very subjective, postmodernist, morally relativistic idea about morals and ethics. Though they will deny this, that is essentially what it boils down to. And if you actually press prominent Freemasons, as I have done recently, they will end with a defeated, yes, I suppose I am a postmodernist of some kind. Essentially that. Shut up! So let's read a little bit from Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike and illustrate why their ideas of morals and ethics are problematic. And then we'll go a little further into their ideas on religion and different religious systems and so on, and show how essentially it is a self-contradictory system, how it's very silly at its core and very problematic. So Albert Pike writes about morals in Morals and Dogma, and this is one passage I'd like to cite first. The Mason does not pretend to dogmatic certainty, nor vainly imagine such certainty attainable. He considers that if there were no written revelation, he could safely rest the hopes that animate him and the principles that guide him on the deductions of reason and the convictions of instinct and consciousness. Essentially what he's saying is if there was no divine revelation of any kind through any of the scriptures we profess to believe in, we would still be able to arrive at the same moral and ethical conclusions by simply observing the world around us and looking internally to our own beliefs. This is completely subjective. This is an idea that you can point to morals and ethics with no objective standard and at the same time call them objective. So at the very least, the secular humanist, the atheist, usually will admit that their ideas are subjective, whereas the Freemason claims that his ideas are an objective source of morality and ethics, however still pointing to his personal preference and ideas about the world as the justification for it. Let's look at another passage about how he sees the reward of good and the punishment of evil to further illustrate how the ideas about good and evil in Freemasonry are completely based on personal preference and comfort. Morality is a force. It is the magnetic attraction of the heart towards truth and virtue. The needle, imbued with this mystic property and pointing unerringly to the north, carries the mariner safely over the trackless ocean, through storm and darkness, until his glad eyes behold the beneficent beacons that welcome him to safe and hospitable harbor. Then the hearts of those who love him are gladdened, and his home made happy. And this gladness and happiness are due to the silent, unostentatious, unerring monitor that was the sailor's guide over the weltering waters. But if drifted too far northward, he finds the needle no longer true, but pointing elsewhere than the north. What a feeling of helplessness falls upon the dismayed mariner. What utter loss of energy and courage. It is as if the great axioms of morality were to fail and no longer be true, leaving the human soul to drift helplessly, eyeless like the Prometheus, at the mercy of the uncertain, faithless currents of the deep. Essentially what he's saying here is when you do the right things and you live in accordance with this moral compass, see what I did there, a little joke for the Freemasons watching, When you live in accordance with this standard of morality and ethics, you are comforted. Your home is there waiting for you. The people around you are comforted. But when you don't live in accordance with this system of moral and ethics, you are adrift at sea, you are lost. It's as if these morals don't exist, which is an odd claim considering the Freemason does not believe in an objective standard really in reality. This was echoed to me by a prominent Freemason who I spoke to recently. When pressed on the idea of good being rewarded and evil punished, he told me that, well, when I do good things, I feel really, really good. And when I do bad things, I feel terrible. So obviously there is an inherent reward and punishment in that system. Okay, what about the psychopath who takes great joy and pleasure in harming others? Is he also living in accordance with the Freemason standard of morals and ethics because he feels good when he does those things and feels bad when he does not? It's a completely subjective standard based on the whims of a person. If I did not have sugar that morning and I'm feeling a little bit off today, I might do bad things and still feel really good about doing those things, and I might do good things and feel bad about doing the good things. I think I said that correctly. Essentially, it is a postmodernist, morally relativistic view. There is no objective standard, though they will tell you that there is, and that's incredibly problematic, and I will point to why a little bit later in the video. Let's go to the next major concern here about Freemasonry, and that is its universal ideas of religion, where it is a home for all religions to come and pray and practice and worship together. This is incredibly silly because all the religions that it professes to bring oneness between them, all those religions disagree on what that God is, who he is, what prayer is, how you serve, and how you live your life. So to claim that they could all be together in Freemasonry as brethren is to essentially say you will subordinate your religious beliefs to Freemasonry. That's incredibly problematic from those religions, which is why a lot of them have banned Freemasonry for their people. So let's go to that passage from Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma, and then we'll unpack why it's not only morally corrupt, but also incredibly stupid. Masonry, around whose altars the Christian, the Hebrew, the Muslim, the Brahmin, the followers of Confucius and Zoroaster can assemble as brethren and unite in prayer to the one God who is above all the Baalim, must needs leave it to each of its initiates to look for the foundation of his faith and hope to its written scriptures of his own religion. This is really problematic. First of all, he's putting Christianity, Judaism, and Islam in a category with Zoroastrianism, and then saying that their one God together is above all the Baalim. But Christians and Jews would, of course, think of Zoroastrians as worshiping one of those Baalim with their dualistic ideas of God, very pagan as far as Judaism, Christianity, or Islam would be concerned. So how can you lump those all together and claim they're worshiping the same God above all the Baalim when they disagree on who the God is and who the Baalim are? And then he also throws Confucius in there as if that's some kind of religious belief in one God like Judaism or Christianity. It's an incredibly stupid passage. It speaks to somebody who may have learned about these different things but did not investigate them to their depths, very similar to the teachings of somebody like Helena Blavatsky around the same time creating Theosophy, another form of syncretism of religions. Funny anecdote here, just to digress a little bit. Albert Pike was a racist who believed that white men were superior to everyone else. Helena Blavatsky believed that the white European was spiritually superior in these spiritual pursuits. It's actually an idea that influenced Hitler. So something that's very troubling when you see this syncretism of religions and these people professing universal truth from all these religions, they tend to be incredible racists. Just something to take note of. But back to this idea that all these religions can be together as brethren in Freemasonry is obviously absurd. Let's look at what those religions actually say and teach, and you'll see why this is incredibly ridiculous. Let's start with Islam by citing from the Quran. And whoever desires other than Islam, that is submission to God, as religion, never will it be accepted from him, and he in the hereafter will be among the losers. Islam is very clear. You can't practice other religions, other systems of morality or ethics outside of what has been revealed to you in the Quran by Muhammad. That's the will of Allah revealed through the Prophet. You can't go to outside religions, systems, programs for your beliefs on morals and ethics. which is why it is not permitted for Muslims to be Freemasons. Islam is the best example here to use for the absurdity in Freemasonry, because if somebody is a Freemason who is a Muslim, they have fully subordinated their being a Muslim to their Freemasonry. They have rejected their religion completely. So that's the first example. Let's look to Judaism. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession. The view of Judaism, whether talking ethnocentrically or speaking even of converts, so anyone who's religiously Jewish falls into the same category, you are the chosen people with this covenant with God. There is no system outside of it. There's no place for you outside of it. This is a system that God has given to the Jewish people, ethnically Jewish or religiously Jewish, to be in a covenant with him. You cannot be Jewish and Freemason. It doesn't work on a logical level. Now, there are many prominent Freemasons who were also prominent rabbis. They have subordinated their Jewish principles of belief in God and the ethics of the Torah. They have subordinated that completely to Freemasonry. Now let's look to Christianity. You might think that Christianity would be the most charitable here. No, not at all. Let's look to what Christianity actually says about this. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's John 14:6. Let's look to another verse. Nor is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. That's Acts chapter 4, verse 12. There is no other name. There's no other version of this God. There's no one else to worship. There's no salvation anywhere else. To be a Christian and a Freemason is to be not a Christian. You can't be both. They are contradictory. Now, you might be thinking here, well, the Brahmins, the Hindus, the Eastern religions, this is where you're going to find that you can be a religious person and a Freemason. Nope. Same thing as Christianity, and let's look to those verses as well. Those who discard the injunctions of the scriptures and act according to their own whims attain neither perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. That's from the Bhagavad Gita. It's very clear from Hindu scriptures, you cannot look for enlightenment elsewhere. There might be a personal enlightenment and journey, but the scriptures are important. And you will not find happiness elsewhere, as Freemasons claim. You will not find purpose, perfection, or meaning elsewhere, as Freemasonry claims. And you will not find the eternal destination, whatever that means in Hinduism, heaven, enlightenment, connection with the divine. You will not find that elsewhere other than in what has been taught to you through your scriptures. Let's look to another verse on the Hindu front. It is far better to discharge one's own prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than another's duties. Destruction in the course of one's own duty is better, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Hinduism, in their scriptures, in the Bhagavad Gita, for an example, fully indicts this idea from Freemasonry that you can find any kind of path with other people that believe other things. They might have their way and their path to the divine. Hinduism might agree on that. You might have your path to the divine, but your path is not their path, and you have no business overlapping. Your way is to be your way. So to be a Hindu would also be contradicting being a Freemason. You can't be a Hindu and a Freemason either. Now, you might think at the very least Buddhism, right? There's no real reason why a Buddhist couldn't be a Freemason. Well, in this case, it's actually from the Freemason's perspective. To allow a Buddhist to be a Freemason is to contradict the rules of Freemasonry. You might use wordplay and games to allow the Buddhist to be Freemason, but essentially they deny the existence of an intelligent creator of all things that is an architect in the way that Freemasonry describes it. The Buddhist should not be allowed to be a Freemason from the Freemason's perspective. That is also incredibly dishonest from the perspective of Freemasonry to claim that that is equally relevant and can be put together. Now, I want to get here to the deepest, most problematic aspect of Freemasonry and its claims. This is not the last point, but I think it is the most important one. Freemasonry, in its essence, is not actually a system of morality or ethics, as we've pointed out. What it is a hierarchical, class-based social club where you are an initiate, and then you go through various rituals to go through the ranks and grow in your position in Freemasonry. Now, there might not be any kind of real power that comes with it, but that is the system in place. The problem here is that they're claiming to provide meaning and purpose to young people who will come to Freemasonry, providing them an ethical compass, see, I did it again, for these people to find a meaningful and purposeful life. However, they are self-admittingly doing the opposite in favor of protecting the social class in Freemasonry. Let's look to a few passages from Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma that illustrate this problem. Masonry, like all the religions, all the mysteries, Hermeticism, and alchemy, conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages, or the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve only to be misled. What they're saying here is, first of all, this is not true. Other religions do not do this. Maybe the Hermeticism, the alchemy, the Gnosticism, maybe in those practices they do, but in the other religions, the main ones that he's claiming to be relevant here, they do the opposite. If you come to convert to Judaism, rare though that might be, they will teach you how to be Jewish. They will not allow you to convert unless you know how to be Jewish. If you come to Islam, they expect you to know how to be a Muslim, and they will teach you. If you come to Christianity, they will teach you how to be a Christian, how to live in accordance with Jesus Christ. That is what they will do if you want to be a Christian. They essentially dictate you must learn all the things. You might not understand them, you might not get them at first, but you must learn them and learn how to fulfill this way of living. In Freemasonry, they conceal their practices and ideas from the younger initiates. Essentially, this is self-contradicting. You're claiming it's an objective, ethical, and moral standard, but then you're hiding the true aspects of it from the initiates. So you don't want them to know the essential doctrines of moral and ethics that they're supposed to be following? You're going to hide that from them? How can it be universal then? And if it is universal and they should know it, then aren't you evil for concealing it from them? Let's look to another passage that further illustrates this. The blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is essentially misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine he understands them. The true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Freemasonry. The princes of Freemasonry. This is obviously a hierarchical social order. It's not about the morals and ethics, and if it is, it's subordinated to the social hierarchy. If you weren't trying to do that, why would you hide the essential moral and ethical doctrines and symbolism of it from the younger initiates? That is either self-contradictory, or it's morally corrupt, or both. So we see here the deep problems in Freemasonry. What's wrong with a social and hierarchical moral social society? There's nothing wrong with that. You want to be part of that, be part of it. But if you're claiming it's going to give purpose to young men, let's say, to guide them into a moral and ethical system that's going to bring meaning and purpose to their lives, and then string them along while you drag them through these degrees, essentially teaching them nothing of value along the way, you're actually corrupting their desire to be better people. And that is the fundamental evil flaw within Freemasonry. Now, I do want to touch on the Satanism part of things just a little bit to kind of maybe dismiss some aspects of it, but also validate another part of it. Freemasons don't worship Satan. They don't have satanic rituals where they sacrifice to Satan, hail Satan, but they are Satanists in the sense that they believe the same thing that Satanists believe. Satanists also, in the modern sense, don't sacrifice goats to Satan for the most part. They don't do satanic actual rituals. In fact, they profess that they don't actually believe in Satan. It's just meant as a way to combat religion. And that's where Freemasonry and Satanism are the same. They don't believe in an inclination to do evil things. It's all part of the grand architect's ideas, which you might be able to reconcile that to some degree with Christian or Jewish or Islamic beliefs, but essentially they're dismissing a main part of the theology there in favor of this idea that we don't actually have any real evil in the world. Let me point to a passage from Pike in Morals and Dogma that first kind of validates that he does see Satan in a biblical way, but then contradicts himself afterwards. Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name given to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. For it is he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls. Essentially, Pike here is agreeing with a biblical stance on Lucifer, that he presents himself as an angel of the light, for example, in 2 Corinthians. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So essentially, Pike is agreeing with the biblical notion of Satan here, presenting himself as an angel of the light so that he may deceive you into the darkness, to prey on your feeble soul and guide you to darkness while presenting himself as an angel of the light. However, Pike then goes to completely contradict himself. Let's read the next part. Hence it is that certain beliefs are universal. The conviction of all men that God is good led to a belief in the devil, the fallen Lucifer or light-bearer, Shaitan the adversary, Ahriman or Tufan, as an attempt to explain the existence of evil and make it consistent with the infinite power, wisdom, and benevolence of God. What he's saying here is all this evil is part of the plan, it's part of God's architecture, which again, from a theological standpoint, in Christianity or Judaism or Islam, you can reconcile those ideas. However, he's dismissing the idea that there is an objective evil in the world that leads you to do evil things. Now, whether you're a religious person who believes that it's the devil tempting you, or you're a secular atheist that believes that it's primal human instincts that are leading you to do evil things, regardless, those two groups will agree that human beings tend to lead towards doing bad things when unchecked. And that's why the atheist can actually live by the same moral standards as the Christian, for example. However, the Freemason, like the Satanist, dismisses this. There is no evil inclination. There is no real desire to do evil. You're going to naturally feel bad when you do bad things, and you're going to feel good when you do good things. So you're naturally going to be inclined to good things if you follow that idea. This is where Freemasonry is essentially a satanic doctrine. The dogmas, morals, ethics, ideas of Freemasonry are in that way satanic. Now, I don't think this is the most important thing to focus on when it comes to Freemasonry. Essentially, it's a silly organization. To claim that they control the world when they couldn't organize their way out of a paper bag is nonsense. However, it is incredibly destructive as an ideology, as a group, for young people that want to find ethics, morals, meaning, and purpose. It is corrupting that desire by bringing people into something that claims to do that for them and then essentially does nothing of the sort.